I want to give you an example of how this all works after going through some of your lessons and before you need to create for me your Gizmo project. So we're going to create a pet object. And so we have our preprocessor section at the very top of the file. And then I have created, in this case, class pet. And it will be framed by a set of curly braces ended by a semicolon. So the private variables, those are those characteristics of the pet. And so we're going to just create a couple of them here. I'm going to give him a name. I'm going to give him a type, like is it a dog? And I'm going to give it a color. And I'm going to give it an age. All right. We do not define them at this point. All we're doing is saying to the system, this is what's going to describe my object. And every time I make an object of pet type, it will use these variables as its reference. So some of the functions here, first, we need a constructor. So we're going to use two constructors, and I will share that with you shortly. We will actually also have one that will set some values where we're going to be able to pass it its name. We're going to be able to pass it its type, its color, and its age. Okay, so in this section here, along with the variables, we're also creating the prototype. So right here is where we would use the idea of the prototypes. So we need the ability to access all of these private variables through public members of the class, the functions of the class, those things that I can do with my pet, and then be able to update them if I want to update them. So we're first going to get, so we need a return type, but we're going to get the name. We need to be able to set the name. So that's void because all I'm doing is updating a value in memory, and I'm using a variable name. I have to pass it the value for which I want to update it for. We're going to be able to get to the type, and I'm also going to be able to set the type. We're going to set the color, and we're going to set the color. And I forgot to pass the type. And then a couple more here, we're going to be able to get the age. Now, this is what we call camelback lettering. We've been using this before, with my function names. Ability to set the age in the event we need to update the dog's age. We're also going to have a display. And I just separate that out, but that doesn't have to be. Okay, so the ability to display the attributes of my object, and we'll take a look at how we can do that then. So here in the class, we have defined all the values, the members of the class, okay, the private variables that are associated with the object itself. Each individual pet that I make will have these four variables, these four characteristics, and each pet that I create has access to all of these functions, okay, to be able to get and set the private variables. And there might be, and I'll put it in here, but we won't necessarily use it, not sure how, but we could do that. We could actually write a function called play, okay, and the ability to, have an interaction or whatever with the dog itself. And so the class always is closed by a semicolon. Now we'll come back here to the main function shortly. So here's my default function. Remember, our constructor, we had two of them. It does not have a return type. We do use the class name, the scoping operator, and then this is the constructor header. And so he is going to, in the default, we're just going to set them equal to empty values so that we always want maybe that chance of a placeholder. You know, if let's say I want to create a roster of students, I know that I am asking kids to try out for a team. I'm going to create 20 players on my roster, but I don't know who those members are going to be for the team. And so I might want to create them, but then later be able to update them. So very similar here. And so here, this one is the default constructor that allows me to pass all the specific parameters. I know who the dog is. I know his color. I know his type, you know, and so I can set that here. So the constructor headers names are different than these variable names, and they don't have to be the same up here. I don't think I use the same ones up here. But as long as they match in order and in data type, we're good to go. All right, so I'm going to put that in there. So these are the values that we are passing when we create our actual object from main. And so here, this is setting aside all of these variables in a private locker for my pet. So then I need my accessor and mutator methods, functions. Those are the things that will allow me to get and set and update my private variables. So function header, what is it returning? The scope of it, it belongs to the pet class, and the function name. Now this one is just getting the name. So all it's doing is returning the private variable. So I have to use the private variable name, and that happens to be return. This one's going to allow me to just update the name. You know, maybe I need to change. So certainly like if, like on an account, you know, maybe the person got married or divorced, and so they needed to change their last name. So they're being allowed to update the value, the private value memory. So we're letting the private variable name equal a new value that's being passed. So we'll complete that. We're going to return the color or the type. Type was the variable that we use, string pet scoping operator. Okay, we're going to be able to set it. So I'm going to let type equal T. And I have finished out the other ones where I can get the color, I can set the color, I can return the age, set the age, display. I did add an extra one on there while I was doing this, and that was the ability for my pet to play. And we can just see out a simple statement about my object, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Okay, and I'm just kind of adding that on, sort of as a last thing there. I need to close the quotes. Alrighty, so there are some things that are a little empty about this. So with the display, there are a couple ways that we can complete this display, and because this is of pet class scope, I can actually directly reference the variables that the pet has for his type. Or, so I just want to demonstrate both, I can actually use the function get color or get name. I can do that. So I can either use the instance variable, the private variable, because it has class scope, or I can use the function, and we'll see that I'll be able to do both. Okay, so let's take a look at creating an object. So we're going to create a pet. I'm going to create a pet called Sam. So we'll see what happens when we display Sam. And then I'm going to create a pet called Molly. That happens to be my dog. Okay, so we were passing string for the name. We're passing the string for the type. She's a golden retriever. And color, she is gold. And her age, she happens to be 2 right now, so we will pass that information. So let's go. We're going to display, we're going to have Sam. Now, in order for our objects to use these functions up here, they require that function, an object of that type, to call on it. Because these are of pet type, I need a pet to call on them. So Sam is a pet, so Sam is going to call to display his instance variable values. I'm going to just see out a blank line so that we can break it apart a little bit. And then I'm going to call for Molly to display her private information. Okay, I'm going to put in another cout just to, and so we're going to see what happens. Sam, remember, didn't have any values, so we're going to see how that all executes. And we will see that Sam should be all empty in values. Molly will be updated in values. So you can see that Sam had nothing, and that Molly was a golden retriever, and so forth. So we can update. So let's update Sam's information. So what we'll do is we will call for Sam to set his name, and we'll pass Sam. We'll ask Sam to set his type. He is a frog. We will ask Sam to set his color. He is going to be green. And we're going to ask Sam to set his age. And he is going to be 4. And looks like I misspelled here. And we will call to redisplay Sam. Piece of cake. And we will execute that. And we will see that Sam went from being empty to Sam actually having values. The only one we didn't call on is we didn't call for Sam to play. We didn't call for Molly to play. And here we go. We can see then it will just print out Sam, let's play, Molly, let's play. And here we have the idea of creating an object with its instance variables, its functions related to it. One of the key things I want you to keep in mind, particularly down here in the display, was that because display is of pet type, I can directly reference the instance variables like I did to demonstrate name and type here, or I can call on the function and it's getting the specific information as it was related to Sam. It got the specific information as it was related to Molly, because that's the way it was created in memory. And that's the beauty of the object and that ability to reuse so much code and be able to use it on as many things as I wanted. I could create an array of pet objects, let's say for a rescue or for a store, and be able to do a lot of things, or like our monkey program. Great way to use to apply the monkey program.